Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And on this video, we're going to pick up where we left off on the Skoal Bandit GSX-R, the junkyard slabby, and see how far we can get. Stay tuned. So the first order of business is going to be to get all the bodywork over to the paint booth and get a couple of coats of clear on it now that all the decals are on there. So I think it was just a little bit crowded in the paint booth when I did this the first time when I put the paint on it. So I think what I'm going to do, because I have one extra item to take, I have another tank off another bike, which will be in another video to get cleared as well. I think I'm going to do it in 2 batches. I'll do half the bodywork today, and I'll go a day later and do the other half. I'll pick up the stuff that I do on day 1 and then bring that home, paint the other stuff, and then pick it up on the 3rd day. So, and then that should, all being well, if it all goes well, that should put an end to the bodywork on this bike. And then after that, I'm still waiting for the carb kit to come in for this bike, because as I said in the prior video, it doesn't make sense to just haul this out with it not running the way I need it to run. I don't need to be chasing phantom problems that I don't know if it's something that I did when I took it out. So the easiest, cleanest, most sensible way to deal with this is rebuild the carbs completely, put them back in, hopefully get this thing running the way that it should, and then I'll tear it down and pull the engine out. And as I've said before, I'm getting anxious to get this thing done. I want to get that engine out and into that new frame. So I'm hoping that the carburetor kit arrives from Thailand this week. And if it does, then you'll see me rebuild the carbs and try this again. If it doesn't arrive, then that'll have to be pushed off to the video after. The other things that still have to be done is the brakes. I stuck the brake caliper and everything back in there. I started to see if I could move the pistons a little bit, which I did. But I think I have to split the caliper in half to get the pistons out of that rear one. The front ones I haven't even touched yet. So yeah, I've got to do master cylinders, rebuild calipers, and then there's a lot of other stuff in here that has to go back on the bike, but needs to be cleaned up and dealt with first. The seat, the lady that does my upholstery is on on some sort of leave from her job at the moment in the upholstery shop. So I'm hoping that she's back sometime this week, and we'll see if that happens, and then I can get. I need to get that seat done, and the bum pad needs to be done. But yeah, there's no shortage of things to go at. So one way or another, it should be it should still be a busy time here in the shop, and we'll see how far we can get. First coat of clear. Looking good. Shooting clear coat has got to be my favorite part. Make everything look shiny and pretty. There we go. Looks pretty damn good. So this will stay here until tomorrow morning. And I'll come back with the other panels. Get the rest of it done, take this stuff down, put the other ones up, and then we'll be done, I hope. Okay, so 2 coats of clear. Just gonna go around and make sure I haven't got any spots that I missed or went on dry or anything. Well, looks pretty good. So yeah, I'm super pleased with how these items came out of the paint booth. The clear coat went on so nicely. Went on like glass. I think the only spot is right here. There's a little bit of trash in the clear coat, something landed. So I'll wait maybe 3 or 4 days for that to really harden up, and I'll tape off the R, and I'll hit that with some 3000, and then I'll just buff it and it'll be fine. But yeah, everything came up so nicely. It's gonna be one of my best paint jobs so far, which is good. It means I'm getting better, so that's nice. I think definitely the right call, putting the stripe on the front fender with the Bandit head. Looks much better than just having a plain little Suzuki lettering on the front there, and having the whole thing dark green. It really does need this stripe to liven it up a bit. So this is the tiny little piece of trash that got into my paint on the tank, and so my plan is to knock that down and then buff it all to get rid of all of that, or the majority of it. So what I've done, just because the decal is slightly raised here, because it's a decal, so of course it's raised and it's got clear coat on it, I've taped off part of the decal so that I don't rub through the edge with my 3000 grit. So, and I'm using it wet, so this is 3000, and I'm going to put it around this little rubber squeegee and just start to work that one little spot down until I get it to a point where I'm happy with the fact that it's not as noticeable or completely gone, one or the other. And then what I'm going to do after that is take some rubbing compound. It'll be this stuff on my buffer. Now, ideally I should be using a foam pad on here, but I don't have one. And to be completely truthful, well, there is a foam pad underneath here, but I'm not convinced or sure that it's the right foam pad for doing what I want to do. So I've used this before. It works okay. It's probably not quite as aggressive as a foam pad maybe, but that's okay. It seems to do the trick quite well. So I just squirt a little bit of, I missed a little bit of water on there to dampen it up a bit, like a spot or two of compound on there, and then I'll get to buffing that once I've got it sanded down. So let's see how I can knock that down. So I'm actually finding it a little bit easier to get in there with just put my finger on the wet sandpaper. It's taking quite a while. It's quite a large scab that I'm trying to get off there. Keep it lubricated. So there, I just buffed it. It's still, you can still slightly see it there, but it's 1,000 times better than it was. I'm just afraid of going too far. As I said before, I'm not a pro at this stuff, so wet sanding and buffing and all that kind of stuff is kind of new to me, so I'm okay with that. A blind man on a galloping horse would be glad to see it. Alright, so my carb kit arrived from Light Tech in Thailand, and just if you've never used Light Tech, I think it's spelled Litetech. They make really high quality carburetor kits. The Viton rubber and everything they use is really good stuff. I've used their kits quite a number of times. Very good stuff. Highly recommend them. It's not paid advertisement or anything. They just have a really good product. So I'm gonna put the carbs in the ultrasonic cleaner today. And yes, this is a cheap ultrasonic cleaner that I got off Amazon quite a number of years ago. I probably used this thing, I don't know, 40-50 times, and so far so good. It continues to do the job. I've got my special cocktail of industrial 297 Super Solve concentrate in here, and I get it from this gentleman. Works really well. And I also put a splash of lavender pine sol in there, and that seems to work for me. So we'll stick this stuff in for 20 minutes, and as soon as I turn this on, the sound on the phone is going to go crazy. So once it turns on, I'll shut the camera off. All right, so I ended up putting these back in for another 10 minutes just because I was busy putting all the new O-rings on everything. So these slide housings have new O-rings. There's new O-rings on the float assembly there. See the blue O-ring? There's new O-rings on the valve seats. There's new cap and seats on the choke. And there's new float bowl gaskets to go in there. These are the O-rings for the top cap. There's new O-rings and washers for the pilots. And so, basically now I'm just, as I said, I've just taken these things out of the ultrasonic cleaner. And I'll just put them on the bench I did scribe each one of these with a number, so as long as I can see the number. It's number 1. Next step is I'm just gonna blow all these things out with compressed air and then start the reassembly process. Okay, so I've just started reinserting these plastic slide housings in here. There's a new O-ring. Now I will say, these are a wear item on these carburetors, and these ones in truth should probably be replaced. So there's a little wear tab that's on the corner, so once you kind of wear right down to where you really can't see the little notch anymore, they should be replaced. Some of these you can barely see the notch, but by and large they are worn to the point where they should be replaced. I do not have a set of replacement slides, so at this point they're just going to go back in, and then we'll ascertain whether or not that's going to be an issue, and if it is, then I'll have to source some new ones. All right, so the slide guides are in. I put the slide in with the diaphragm and the spring, and then the new top cap O-rings go in there. So next we'll pop the top caps on, and then that is the top end reassembled. Okay, top ends are all assembled. You have to be careful that the diaphragm is seated properly in the top and the O-ring doesn't shift when you mount it. So now on to the bottom end. So basically we'll get these guys flipped over. I find that the most difficult part of this whole process isn't kind of rebuilding each of the individual carburetors. It's pretty simple. It's getting them all back together. So the way that's going to end up working is we'll join these two, we'll join these two, and then we'll put the 4 of them back together, and then put the racking bars on. But typically the most challenging piece is just getting the throttle assemblies to sync up together and getting these little paddles underneath the springs without firing a spring across the shop. So when you're putting the O-rings and the washers on the pilots, washer goes on first and then the O-ring goes on second. So then it'll seat, allows the washer to push on the O-ring or the spring to push on the washer. So we'll get all those inserted, and then we'll set them all up the same way as they came out. Okay, jets are back in, float assembly is back in, needles, seats, all that kind of good stuff. Now, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people know this. When you put the jets back in, you don't need to be cranking them down because you'll just snap them off. Like, just snug them down. If you've got to get a full hand on a screwdriver and start cranking it, you're going to snap them off. Just snug them in, and they should be fine. What I have to check next, though, on these is the float height, because that's one of the things I'm concerned about. So as you saw, this thing was puking fuel like crazy, and there's only a number of reasons that can happen. So one of them is that the floats could be quite far off where they should be. Needle and seats leaking, which I suspect was the actual issue, because I could definitely see a distinct ring around the needle. Anyway, there's also some crap in there as well, so let's just check what the float heights are. I do have this tool here for setting float heights. So the spec on this is 14.6 millimeters plus or minus 1. Higher the number, the lower the fuel level. So I just set that at 15 as a reasonable place to start. Now I remember doing the carbs on the other Suzuki that I had, and the thing about these things is they don't actually sit fully seated until you put the float ball on, because you can see here how these tabs kind of have to seat down when the float ball is attached. So I've got to make sure that they are seated down properly. And then the other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to test these. So if you could see in there the little plunger, you don't want that fully compressed. You just kind of want to tilt the carburetors until they start to seat. So you kind of hold it at an angle. So obviously they're not seated at all there. And then just as they start to touch it, just use right about there when they're at 45 degrees, that's kind of where you want to set the float height. And normally, a lot of carburetors, the halfway point on that float with this kind of a profile line is usually parallel with the body of the carburetor. Now this one it isn't. So whether that means that the float height is set wrong, we're about to find out. Alright, so I couldn't use my float gauge just because of this kind of assembly over top of the float, so I ended up using the vernier caliper depth gauge, which worked just fine. So far, only one of the carbs has the correct float level. The others are a little too low on the number, meaning a little too much fuel. So they're still within spec, but I'd like to get them all to be the same, right around 15 millimeters. So I think one of them was actually under spec. This one was 14.2. So yeah, we'll bend the tabs, I guess, and get these things sorted out. All right, so I've set all the float heights. Didn't need too much adjustment, but anyway, they're all the same. I set them all about 14.9 millimeters is what it worked out to, so that's fine. Float bowls are on, new gaskets, slight coating as all of them with some rubber grease on all the new O-rings and gaskets and whatnot. And then, you just snug these things down on the float bowls, guys. The number of times where you try to take off carburetor bowls that somebody has mounted in the past, and you've got to be Arnold Schwarzenegger to get them off. If you've got a decent gasket in there, just snug them down. The gasket will do its job. They don't need to be put on with an impact gun or anything like that, so just go easy on them. So next thing is I'm going to put these fuel crossover tubes between these two carbs. And then there's also these breather vent tubes that have to go in. And then the tricky part is just kind of getting all the assemblies to line up with these paddles. So that's the part I'm going to monkey with next. All right, so these two are together. These two are together, so now I'm just kind of marrying up these. Again, thin smear of rubber grease on the seals. And basically what I've been doing is, if you can see down in here, I'm using this small flat screwdriver. And I'm going into not under the bottom of the spring, but one coil down. And then I'm pulling basically the spring back so that I can insert this. I can't do it with holding the camera at the same time, but you get the idea. Just basically pull the spring back this way to open up enough of a gap to slide that in. All right, everything's back together. Racking bars are back on. Only tip I would say about putting these racking bars back on is don't tighten any of the screws until you get them all started. It just makes it way easier. All the hoses are back on, so Next step is not to put this back on the bike. The next step is to test it, bench test it. And so what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to set them up in this washing up bowl. I'm going to put some blue shop towel in the bottom, and then I'm going to attach the remote fuel feed bottle to the carbs and see if I get any sort of leakage. And then if I don't get any immediate leakage, then I'm going to let it sit for at least a day with the fuel directly running to it to make sure that it doesn't seep out anywhere. Yeah, one last word on the ultrasonic cleaner. I find it's a good practice to always start and end with an absolutely spotless cleaner. I drain everything out because you never know what you're going to find in the bottom. If you've missed a step and there's an O-ring somewhere that's fallen out during the ultrasonic cleaning process, it'll be in here. And if you clean a whole pile of different sets of carburetors and you're a rookie or an idiot like me, then and then one day you go to drain it after you've done 3 sets of carbs, and there's an O-ring in there, and you're kind of wondering, which one did it come out of when you've done, 3 racks of carburetors. And some of those carbs are a little more complex, and there's O-rings in some strange places. So good practice to start with a clean and end with a clean ultrasonic cleaner. It just takes all the guesswork out. I guess if you're trying to save some money on cleaning products, whatever, and you don't want to drain it every time, then I guess that's your call and a gamble that you're willing to take. But I'm a little too particular for that, so I'd rather know if I've made a mess of something and find a loose part in the bottom somewhere. I'd rather know right up front. Okay, here we go. Shop towel in the bottom just because it makes it easy to spot leaks. Make sure I've got all these hoses tucked inside. Those are the overflow hoses. And I got my fuel bottle. Now, starting off with just about this much fuel in here, not a ton, but just enough to create a bit of fuel pressure. And if you really want to test it over the longer term, you can fill it up and give a bit more pressure. But we'll turn this on and we'll see what happens here. Hope for the best, because the way she was leaking before, it was going to be pretty obvious pretty quickly. So far so good. All right, well, there's nothing puking out yet, so that's a good sign. So we're going to leave that certainly for the rest of today, potentially overnight, and that'll give me some confidence that they're ready to go back on the bike if there's no fuel stains anywhere. Again, there's no point in creating danger issues with fuel puking all over the place and filling cylinders or all of that nonsense. It's just easy to it's easier to test it here and be sure, and then you're done with it. You know that the carbs are clean and they're going to hold fuel. The carburetors passed the test. I actually ended up leaving in there for 2 days, so they are good to go, I believe. Now, one thing I will mention is that carburetor number 1, which is this one, was missing parts in the top cap. There's a plastic washer and whatnot that sits on top of the needle underneath the spring. That was missing, which was basically allowing the whole needle just to if you tilted this, the needle would just disappear out of the slide because nothing was holding it in. So yeah, I'm not sure who rebuilt these or who cleaned them, but they were neither rebuilt or cleaned. So let's see how they work now. All right, carbs are back in. I got the remote fuel bottle hooked up here, and I've just plugged this vacuum line. It goes to carburetor number 2 since there's no fuel tank on it. Battery's back in, so I guess we'll turn the fuel on. And we'll put the choke on. Give that a second to fill the float bowl. Well, that was tons better. All cylinders firing. There was the occasional gasping from one of the carburetors right at the beginning there, but it smoothed out a little bit, which is good. Carburetors have not been synced or anything like that, so I'll have to do that later. The main objective was just to make sure that it would fire up and run on all cylinders properly. There's no smoke, so yeah, that's good. Nothing's leaking. So I think we've solved the major issues with the carburetors. They'll definitely have to be synced because I'm sure they've never been done or haven't been done in a long time. So we'll get that sorted out at some point. I'm not going to do that right now. So yeah, I feel comfortable enough now that this thing is behaving that I can start to pull it apart. We'll get this engine out. Now, one thing I'm going to have to figure out is, now this engine is taller than the 750. So on the 750, this rear bolt, which I believe is for the there's a shaft, a rocker arm shaft that goes through the head, which the rocker arms sit on. On the 750, this is a different style of bolt, a fastener, and actually has an extended lug on the end for the fairing to attach to. So I'm not sure with this engine if that would even line up with the back of the fairing that would normally attach to that lug, because if the engine is sitting higher, then typically it's going to be the cylinder that's a little taller, right, than the 750, which would move this up in a way that it would not align with the rear of that fairing. So I mean, the two choices I have were to kind of take this out, put the other one in, or not bother because it's likely not going to line up anyway. But so I'll have to do a bit of research, see what other people have done with that, and see if that makes any difference or not. I imagine it does. So yeah, but that's kind of small potatoes stuff. We'll see how we get on. So yeah, we can get this thing torn apart now. I feel better. Onwards. So the other thing I've discovered after checking around on a few things is that I think this is the connector here. Double check, but I think this one is the connector for the gauge cluster. And although it's a different color, it is the same size and shape as the one on the GSX-R750. So the GSX-R gauges will plug right into here. However, I will have to repin this because although it has all basically the same stuff going in there, there's a fuel gauge which I don't need, and that's fine. It'll stay in there. But some of the pins are just in different places for whether it's the neutral indicator or the oil pressure switch or whatever the case is. A couple of them are different, so it'll work. I just have to repin it to match the old one. So I've got the wiring diagram for this bike, and I've got the wiring diagram for the GSX-R750, and it actually shows you how these are pinned. So I should be able to change that so that will work just fine. And then aside from that, the only thing I'll have to do is figure out what I'm going to do with the plugins for the headlight. So obviously this is a single headlight controlling high beam and low beam. So I'll have to either modify this in some way, shape, or form. Somebody said in the comments that they had to put a relay in. I don't know about that. When I say I don't know about that, I'm not adept enough in understanding electrics as to why I need another relay. Presumably there'd be one in here already for high beam, low beam light switches and whatnot, but I'll have to do a bit of research on that. Electrical stuff is not my happy place. So yeah. So aside from that, yeah, as I've said before, engine's going to come out to go in the GSX-R, the wiring harness, the ECU, anything that's electrical. Switch gear is going. What else? Turn signals are going. The oil cooler will be moving over because the lines from this oil cooler are quite different than the ones on the GSX-R. So the only thing different there is the mounting points are different. So I'll have to make up a bracket for this to mount onto the GSX-R750. So yeah, aside from that, apparently it's going to be a bit of a shoehorn job to get it into the GSX-R frame, which I don't doubt. So that'll be fun. So just a few steps away now from removing the entire wiring harness out of here. So wiring harness is out. Now I think I'm going to pull the switch gear off, the clocks, ignition switch, that kind of stuff. Pull the carbs back off, and yeah, we'll just keep picking away at it until I'm ready to pull the engine out. Now, I will say that just like taking any bike apart, I'm going about this exactly the same way. Everything is getting labeled. Everything is getting bagged and tagged and recorded in the book step by step. Even though this bike, the only thing I'm using is engine wiring harness and whatnot, it just saves from having issues later. Not knowing where things go, I'd rather take the time now and label things properly and just make the whole reassembly process that much more seamless. I, for one, can never ever guarantee that I can remember exactly where everything goes or how everything is routed. And sure, some of the wiring connectors will only fit in one place in one switch block, but I just find it gives me comfort and a warm fuzzy feeling inside to know that I've got it labeled. And yeah, just it's the way I do it. Okay, so I'm just going to try to attempt to remove the ignition switch, the key switch here, but if you take a look underneath here, get a shot at this somehow. Okay, see right there, that Torx bit, right at the tip of my finger there. That Torx bit has a little peg in the middle of it. So a conventional Torx socket will not remove that. Those are called security Torx, I believe. And so in order to get them off, you need a Torx bit with a hole in the end, like that. So I bought these some time ago because one day I knew I'd need them. And now we're going to find out if they actually work. I'll see how, as long as these things are hard enough and they're not made of chocolate, they should be okay. Alright, so got them out. The little kit that I have here works just fine. So these are the guys here. Security Torx. Lots of thread locker on them. They were in there, really good. Anyway, they're out now. Alright, so the ignition switch is out, switch gear is all off. Carbs are back out. Wiring harness is gone. Yeah, so next, I think I'll probably pull off the oil cooler. I'll drain the oil, pull off the oil cooler, and then I'll continue to soak those header bolts. I can get at them a little bit better once the oil cooler is gone. Pull off the exhaust system. And then, yeah, then we'll see if we can get the engine out. I guess start pulling off the engine mounts. We'll put a jack or a lift under there, or get rid of that removable frame section, and see how we can shuffle it out of there. So 7 of these exhaust bolts have been stripped out by somebody in the past. This is the only one that was not stripped out. The inside of the Allen head on this one was still okay. The one on the other side, I managed to get loose with a pair of vice grips. The inside of it was stripped. This one here, and yeah, all the others are just completely hogged out inside. So somebody's been at it and not been able to get these out and has stripped them. So now I got a bit of thinking to do, because I don't weld. I don't weld, so I can't weld a nut on there to get them off. If I could weld, I could do that, I guess, but the only other option I have is to transport this bike somewhere else to get that done. So yeah, that's not good. I might soak these for a while in some penetrating oils and see if I can smack a Torx in there to to get them off, just oversized Torx or something like that. That might work. But the one on this side that was not stripped, it took everything I had with a 2-foot breaker bar to get that to crack. So I'm not hopeful that I'm going to be able to move those with a Torx getting hammered in there. I think that's just going to end up stripping out. I don't want to put an easy out in the end, because if I end up snapping the end of the easy out off inside that Allen head, that's going to be a pain in the backside to get out. So so it's either take it somewhere and get some stuff welded on there, or potentially drill them out. The other challenge I'm having is getting this oil cooler off. I've got the one oil banjo bolt has been loosened off. It came off pretty easy. This one I cannot budge it. I cannot get a socket on it. That's the problem. And with an open-ended wrench, I'm just going to run the risk of rounding it off, which I don't want to do. This box wrench, I don't have enough strength in my spindly little arms to break it loose. I can't get a swing at it in any way with a hammer, because the angle of this thing doesn't allow me to. It just hits this thing too soon. So yeah, it's starting to fight me a little bit. I got the oil cooler off. I ended up using my foot against the wrench down there to get enough strength on it to snap that banjo bolt loose. But so yeah, 6 of the 8 are still stuck in here. You can kind of see the condition. All those are hogged out. I have been spraying a lot of penetrating oil on here for the last couple of days, so that's why you see a lot of oil all over the place. But yeah, there's no way they're coming out through conventional means. The Torx, I tried to put a Torx in there. 40 is too small, T45 is too big, can't get it to go in. So I think the only 2 choices are to get some nuts welded on there, or to drill them and drill the heads off, take the headers off, and then drill the studs out, or get some nuts welded onto the studs once I get the engine out of the frame. So I think those are my my choices. Remind me why it is again that I do this, because this is the sort of stuff that just like I don't have the tools or the skills to weld. I wish I did. I need to learn. Definitely need to learn. So I've tried using a 1/4 inch Allen in there, and that was kind of like the next size up. Obviously they're all metric, but the ones that were stripped out, the Allen, the 1/4 inch Allen came real close to biting enough, but at the end it just kind of continues to strip it. These I cannot get to fit at all. The 40 is too small. The T45 is too large. So I've ordered another set of extractors, socket style, to see if they'll work, and another set of these. I've got 3 sets of extractors. None of them will work within the head. These are the style where you really have to drill fairly deep into the bolt to get to bite enough. That they don't work well in a shallow Allen head that's stripped out. So if worst comes to worst, then that's one of the things I'll have to try do is to drill them out. But I'm always paranoid of sharing the extractor, because you can't really drill those out because they're hardened steel. I use my propane torch, sitting over there, you see it, to heat up the bolts, and then after they're kind of as hot as I can get them, I hit them with penetrating oil. Hopefully that will kind of wick some of the penetrant up into the threads. I don't know, but I'll keep doing that for a couple of days until the extractors arrive, and then we'll see if that does the trick. Most of them I think I can get an extractor on, a socket style. However, this one I'm not convinced. if I've got enough room here in between the pipe and the head of the bolt. The others I think I do, maybe just. We'll see how it works. But anyway, I've got 3 out so far. These are the ones that were they weren't fastened in very well. These ones were not that tight, plus they had never sees on them. The 2 on the left side on the outside. This one, it took a bit of force, but it came out. It was the only one that still had a discernible Allen head on it. It wasn't stripped, but the others, no luck. So we'll keep at it. So it might be time to break out this this old Mastercraft MIG welder that I got eons ago. I've only tried using it once and it was an absolute disaster. I probably weld something far too thick. I had the settings all wrong. I never practiced on it. It was really, really thick metal, and I think the combination of my skills, my knowledge, using no argon gas and just flux core on a particular job that I don't know. It was, anyway, the whole thing was a complete and total disaster. So what it's just got flux core wire in there. I don't have an argon gas bottle. So maybe what I'll have to do as part of my plan to get these exhaust studs out is do some practicing with this thing. All right, so I've been practicing here, just kind of welding on this bolt and this nut, just to see if I can weld the nut to the head of the bolt. But I seem to be, well, first of all, my wire feed keeps getting stuck sometimes because that's a piece of junk, and then I'm not sure I'm getting enough penetration on the bolt. I have it set for, I think it's for the negative electrode, which is for flux core. That one there. But I'm not sure whether I'm really getting any penetration on the weld. I mean, that one seems to be sticking. So that blob there, yeah, that one seems to have stuck. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. So I've just been heating this up a couple of times a day with the propane torch, and then just soaking it down with penetrating oils, hoping that that's going to help a little bit as we move through the process. I have been trying to get this one with a chisel just to see if I can start to knock it loose, but that has yielded no results. All the others I can't even get at with the chisel. So I think the plan of attack now is going to be I'll wait for my extractor bits to come in. We'll try those. If that doesn't work, then maybe I'll have to decide whether or not it's going to be better to try my own MIG welding, do a little bit of practice first and see if I can weld some nuts onto here. It seems to be kind of an adventurous plan for somebody that doesn't weld. You know what I mean? Sure, I can practice and maybe I'll get semi-decent to mediocre at it or something like that, but I'm not sure that I'm gonna develop the skills quickly enough to get a good weld on a nut. And if I don't get a good weld on a nut and the nut just snaps off, then I'm not really gonna be able to, drill these out very easily if they're full of weld either. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to think about this a little bit and see what makes the most sense. I'm not even certain I can get a drill bit in there to drill those off, just because of where the frame is. It's not really a straight run into there. You end up being off at an angle, so that's not ideal. Yeah, what a pain in the keister. Oh, anyhow, so we'll see. I really don't want to be hacking off these header pipes because there's a good chance I'm going to have to reuse them. So yeah, I don't want to make a mess of that. So I might end up having to wheel this bike back out of the shop onto the trailer and wheel it in somewhere for them to do that for me. but we'll see, one step at a time. In the meantime, that's going to wrap it up for this video. We're about out of time here, and the next time you tune in, hopefully I've got this thing sorted out. And the other thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to drop off the seat and the green vinyl. I found somewhere that can do it. My local person, she told me that it was going to be 3 months wait, which I'm just not good at waiting at anything, so that just wasn't going to work for me. So I found another guy in the next town that does this sort of stuff. So we'll go visit him this afternoon, take this along, see what he says, and we'll go from there. So please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate the subscriptions and the comments. And as I've said before, this is the longest running restoration that I've ever done. I think I started this, the first video was back, the real video as far as restoration goes, back in December, middle of December, and now we're about to hit the middle of March here. So my video series is about 2 weeks or so ahead of what you're watching. So yeah, I think the next series of videos will actually start being a little bit shorter, and the progress might get a little bit slower because we're now getting back into the spring and the farming season is coming up. So it's going to take a little bit longer to get things done, but I will still be posting videos. And yeah, bear with me. We'll get there in the end. Thanks for watching.